Welcome back to another video, and today I will be showing you my favorite colorful eyeshadow palettes. Welcome back, and today we are doing another sort of palette, eyeshadow palette favorite video of from a sort of in category. So recently I did the neutral eyeshadow palettes that I have been really liking this year, and I think that video is actually, it did quite relatively well for my channel, so I thought that I would also be doing the sort of more colorful ones. So I think these are all palettes that are purely like colorful palettes, so I tried to like exclude like all the sort of because a lot of eyeshadow palettes these days, I think they are more or less like a neutral mix of neutral shadows with some colors, so I really tried to stick with the theme of colorful eyeshadow palettes. In this one we aren't going to be, I'm not going to divide this into the sort of drugstore, high-end and indie, because most of these are indie palettes. There is two high-end eyeshadow palettes that I am kind of grouping as a one that I will like start with this one, but these are all like just we're going to go through them like without the sort of separation that I usually have in my eyeshadow videos. But anyway, let's get now to the showing the palettes themselves. Okay, let's go first with the only like non-indie option. So for the like only like high-end option that I am, and these are going to be grouped as one, and this, if you have watched some of my previous videos, shouldn't be any surprise, and now I'm gonna have to see that I don't drop these. So these this is, as you can probably see, I'm gonna actually close that. Yeah. So Natasha Denona, this is the Pastel palette and Circo de Loco, and this is sort of from the like non-indie colorful eyeshadow palettes that I do like enjoy and sort of made it into this video. So why I have grouped these as sort of one is because I use these palettes always as sort of one palette. And the reason is purely because from the Pastel palette, while it has very pretty pastel shades, you can't really build with depth. There's only like one this sort of purple shade that you can kinda get depth from it, but with this one all the looks will come out very light if you use this alone. You will get like pretty pastel looks out of it, but this is like, it is very like one-toned. With Circo de Loco, there are like few lighter shades in here, but I have felt that because especially the shimmers in this one, a lot of them are quite dark. I had tried to like made an effort to use this, and you can kind of are able to, if you do some work, you are able to use this as a standalone palette, but because of the shimmer shades, I did often feel that I was quite stuck in sort of getting quite deep looks. So, but together I think these are like the perfect combination if you want this sort of like a higher end colorful eyeshadow. With Natasha Denona, I will definitely say that especially the very sort of dark shades, the blending isn't like they aren't my favorite shades to blend because they do like require some effort, but I think with this one, like the only very dark shade that I have felt that I do have to work about is this one. So it's this sort of deep turquoise shade here called Acrobat. But as I said, still, even with its like even though this isn't like the most blendable formula ever, I do like Natasha Denona's formula, and together these two palettes make some beautiful colorful looks. Okay, and now let's get to the main show, which is mainly like indie eyeshadow palettes. And I do have to say that indie brands, what they are especially good at is at making colorful shade formulas that are easy to work with and are even like beginner friendly, and I think that is something that I think indie shadows should be very like credited for. Okay, let's maybe first start with my favorite. So I think from like, if I would have to say that what is your like absolute favorite colorful palette in your collection, and if you could only like hypothetically keep one colorful palette. So my choice would be this one. So this is the Cosmic Brushes Delicious Delights palette. This came out last summer, and like Cosmic Brushes has my like absolute favorite eyeshadow formula, especially in terms of colorful shades. It packs quite a punch, but it is still very blendable and very easy to work with, and also it is very like decently priced, even though the price of their palettes has gone up, but that's due mainly to the fact that they now include these sort of multi-chrome shades, for example, that this palette has one. But it is still, for an indie sort of indie brand, they are still in the more like not affordable side, but in the sort of decently priced side. What I like about this one, again, what have said that makes I think a very sort of good pastel palette is that there are some depth in this one. So there are some nice pastel shades, there are more like fairer shades, and then there are mid-tone shades, but we do have some darker shades. So we have here these sort of purple and berry shades, even these sort of green shades here. And then we have a dark blue shade, and then there are like even a few of the shimmer shades that are a bit darker. So that is why this sort of, because this sort of has everything that I sort of like in a more colorful palette, there are some variation in the shades, and we do get also something fun because all the shimmers here are very beautiful, and we even do get a nice fun multichrome here. Then maybe something of an, this is already starting to be I think an older palette, but this is the Plain Jane palette from Adept Cosmetics, and I have the remastered version. And I'm going to open this one. So this is obviously something that I use as a companion palette, so I'm someone who likes to preferably have like 50-50 split between mattes and shimmers. But there are some, like, I do have quite a lot of also all shimmer indie palettes, especially when there was time in the market that most of the indie palettes were just all shimmer palettes. Now the situation has changed, and we also now have like mixed palette, but this is especially from that time when indie brands were still sort of making their way into the makeup market, and what indie did was known for doing well was their sort of shimmer shades. This is still a very beautiful formula. This is the smooth Adept formula. I do know that not everyone has been a fan of their more sort of glittery, the sort of more glittery formula that they have, because I know that, for example, that is quite textured, and to people who have more sort of texture on their lids, I can understand why they would prefer this sort of a smoother formula. This is maybe a bit like pinkish purple leaning, but there are actually like also some like greenish blue shifting shades in this one. And this is again a companion palette that I will use like with sort of other sort of palettes that are matte heavy. For example, this is a palette that I do use in companion with, for example, Cosmic Porsche's palette, because those palettes are actually, at least the ones that I own, those are like more, I'd say, like matte heavy, so that is why I usually like dig out one of these to also use with those ones, because then this sort of, they complement each other. But for me, this is especially something that I do like to use during the springtime because of the sort of tones it has. Then we have two Oden's eye palettes. First one is the Merry Christmas palette. So this one, they restocked this and the Christmas Eve with their newest holiday palettes last year, but this, I got mine in the original launch a couple of years ago. And this is, I'd say, what you would call a primarily, it is like a green and red palette mostly, but this is what I would say that, again, it is still a colorful palette, even though it has maybe like only like, it is focused on a couple of tones. All the looks you will get with this one are very bright, so that is something you should consider. And I have always said that with this one, what is something that in my makeup preferences doesn't make me have to work a bit more is that I am more better at using these as a separate, so I usually, when I create a look, I either stick with this one or then in the green side. But nevertheless, you will get some very punchy, nice, especially red and green looks with this one, and the shimmers in this are very beautiful, and this is one of the best Oden's eye formula that I think they have ever come out with. Then the second Oden's eye palette that I included, so this is the original Hela palette, so this is the Angelica Nyqvist collaboration, and this is their sort of original collab. So Angie came out with another collab with them last Halloween. However, that palette's color story is something that I did discuss already last year, because it's quite of a blue heavy color story. That's why it's not in this video, even though it's colorful. But this one, on the other hand, is the kind of colorful palette that I do like. It is a bit more perhaps that if you are, how should I say, I think what made this quite smart is that yes, they are all colorful shades, but they are a bit more in the toned down side of it. So there are some greens and pinks, but there is some like also some there, for example, this sort of yellowish shade here. This also is more yellow leaning green, even this sagey shade here, and then we have even this sort of more darker leaning shades here that aren't so like punchy in your face. So you get sort of this, I think what has made this palette sort of my favorite like altogether wooden size palette is that you can create something very punchy with this one in terms of colorful looks, but you are also able to create quite, I'd say, also toned down looks if it is something that you're going for. And again, just like with other Oden side palettes, the shimmer formula is beautiful, and even the more punchier mattes like this pink here, or even the like darker mattes, those also blend wonderfully. So if you have this, use it and create some fun looks with it. Then let's next go to GlossGods. So from GlossGods I have another all shimmer palette. So this is Look for the Rainbows, and this is how the palette looks like. This is again one of companion palettes, just like the Plain Jane Remastered, and this is again something that I use in conjunction with especially my Cosmic Brushes palette that tend to be a bit more on the matte heavier side, even those include some shimmers. Some of these do have a bit of shift to them. This isn't the most like shiftiest of indie palettes in terms of shimmers, but nevertheless the shimmers are very like impactful. They are very like very beautiful. They last quite well on your eyes. And this is, I think, a very, if you're looking for just sort of a classical all shimmer rainbow like indie palette, this is a good option, especially if you live in Europe. And GlossGods is also something just like Cosmic Brushes, that they aren't like the most expensive of indie brands. So especially if you're starting out with indie brands and you live in Europe, then this is a good place to start with. And the quality of their palettes, like their shimmers, are like very impactful. Then I think lastly we will go through the sort of newest palette that I haven't actually officially reviewed anywhere. I have just been like sneak peeking this in different videos. So this is the Sickly Sweet from Blend Bunny. So this was their pastel palette that they released on fall time, and I do know that many people were like thinking that why did you release a pastel palette on fall time? That's like a complete wrong season for it. And this I think was actually officially like their Halloween release, because this sort of has this sort of an it does have like this sort of an, I don't know, is this supposed to be a skull in the sort of skull, or what is it in this one, but it is supposed to be like well, it's Sickly Sweet, so it's not supposed to be like all sweet. So this was in my makeup rotation like a couple of weeks, or no, a week ago, because I had to change in the beginning of like this week. And I have already, like, I think I discussed in my makeup haul video that I showed this in the first time, was that I have like, this has returned my trust for Blend Bunny's quality, because we all know that the Sugar and Grunge palette, that was my previous palette that I had gotten before this one, I didn't like it as much. I felt that had quite a lot of quality issues, but this one has now returned my trust to the brand. And this again is one of those very good pastel palettes where you have like deeper shades, and then we have these sort of very bright pastel shades. I think compared to the like Cosmic Brushes one, the Delights palette that I showed, these are more like the sort of neon pastel as compared to the Cosmic Brushes one that had, I'd say, more sort of these traditional bright pastels. So I do think that these two, like, they weren't being in my collection together because the pastel tones are quite different. So I would say this, again, if you've been eyeing this is a good recommendation, and you get a lot of versatility. The only like critique I've had for this is that maybe some of the shimmers, because the shimmers seem to have that, well, they look quite punchy in the pan, a lot of them maybe have a bit more more of a sheer base. So with some of the shimmers I have had the feeling that when I especially lay on top of some of the shades that they do end up looking quite similar. But aside from like maybe that bit of an issue, I'm not gonna like critique it too much, because the shimmers are still very beautiful and very sparkly. They aren't like super shifty shimmers, but they are very still beautiful. But yes, this is the last one of sort of my favorite colorful eyeshadow palettes. So those were all the colorful palettes I had for sort of this video. Comment down below what have been your sort of favorite colorful palettes that you've been using, or has there been some new colorful palettes on the market that you're eyeing and considering to buy? But if you liked this video, then push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell button if you want to get notifications from my future videos. You will also be able to find me on Instagram with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog. I hope I will be seeing you again soon. Have a good day. Bye bye.